It's the 2nd of October of 2015, and the 28th expansion for Magic the Gathering, called Battle for Zendikar, has released. It's the first set in the game's new 2-set block structure, something that was experimented with a few years prior in the Lorwyn Shadowmoor Mega Block. The set, which consists of 274 cards including 17 reprints, features a set symbol resembling a broken hedron and continues a story that was left off on a bit of a cliffhanger from Rise of the Eldrazi, the final set in the original Zendikar block from 2009. You can check out that story by viewing our videos for the sets Zendikar, Worldwake, and Rise of the Eldrazi in our Retrospectives playlist. As for Battle for Zendikar, here is a story summary for you. The Eldrazi, immense nightmarish entities that seem to consume everything around them, are rampaging on the plane of Zendikar, having been released from their eternity-long prison by Planeswalker Nisravain, targeting not just the land, but also various locations where the native Zendikari have taken refuge from these titans and their respective broods. Things looked grim for the future of the plane. It's at about this point in time, mere months after the Eldrazi's release, that Planeswalker Gideon Jura appears on the plane, having been following the trail of yet another Planeswalker, Chandra Nalaar. Chandra, however, was nowhere to be found, and Gideon finds himself embroiled in the disastrous events occurring on the plane as he strives to protect the plane's innocence from the rampaging Eldrazi menace. It wasn't until finally coming face to face with one of the Eldrazi titans that he realized that defending Zendikar from the Eldrazi wasn't something he would be able to do on his own. Vowing to return and finish the job, he left Zendikar in search of aid and allies. He first travels to the plane of Regatha, where he finally catches up with Chandra. Unfortunately, he was unable to convince the Pyromancer to join the effort. Disappointed, but not disheartened, Gideon next travels to Ravnica. There he meets with Jace Beleren, the Mind Mage, though he was knee-deep in his responsibilities as the Living Guild Pact, literally the living embodiment of magical law that kept each of Ravnica's guilds in check with one another. Reluctantly, Jace agrees to assist once Gideon explained just how serious a threat they were facing back on Zendikar. Another Planeswalker was also there on Ravnica along with Jace. Liliana Vess, the Necromancer, was visiting the Mind Mage at the time. She refused to help and, in fact, took it as an affront that Jace would rather travel off to assist Gideon than spend time with her. Gideon and Jace then travel back to Zendikar. There they arrive just after the city of Sea Gate, one of the last bastions of hope for the plane's populace, had fallen to the Eldrazi, taking with it many of the plane's scholars. Making matters more complicated, they weren't sure which of the Eldrazi titans were even still on the plane. Was it just the one they were certain about, the one called Ulamog? What about the other two, Kozilek and Emrakul? Had they moved on to other worlds? Or were they still somewhere on Zendikar, wreaking havoc? Regardless, Gideon and his allies needed to be ready. Along with refugees from Sea Gate, they set up a survivors' camp in the ruins. They also meet up with Nissa, whom had become distraught as her connection to Zendikar, which fuels her magic, had been severed. She is on a mission to find a way to connect with the plane once more, while Gideon continues to seek out other allies, and Jace begins studying the plane's ley lines and network of hedrons. The three Planeswalkers agree to meet back up at the ruins of Sea Gate once they've completed their respective tasks. Gideon travels across Zendikar in search of new allies to assist in defending the plane against Ulamog and, if necessary, any other Eldrazi who might still be on the plane. He finds help in the form of some of the plane's vampires, led by Drana. Many of the surviving denizens of Sea Gate also sign on to assist, as well as a merfolk elementalist known as Noyan Da. He also successfully enlists the aid of Kiora, a merfolk planeswalker, along with her followers. Also, a number of Zendikar's elves, Kor, goblins, and, eventually with the help of Nissa, elementals. he musters his new allies at the ruins at Sea Gate. Deep underground on the continent of Akum, Jace enters the Eye of Ugin. It's a place he's been to before, as, a few years ago, he and Chandra had a violent encounter with Sarkhan Vol, which resulted in them inadvertently weakening the lock there that held the Eldrazi imprisoned. He's hoping to discover some clues there that would help him better understand the plane, and how the Eldrazi were able to become imprisoned in the first place. Once in the chamber, he finds something better. The spirit dragon, Ugin. Ugin, whom was trying to figure out how to reseal the Eldrazi as well, though this time without the help of fellow planeswalkers and original Eldrazi sealers, Sorin Markov and the Lithomancer Nahiri. He explains to Jace as to how, 1,000 years or so before, they were able to utilize Zendikar's Hedrons to bind the Eldrazi. Jace deduces that a similar method could be used to immobilize Ulamog and his brood, allowing them the chance to slay the Titan rather than re-imprisoning him. Ugin, though, cautions against this tactic, as slaying the Titans could have dire consequences down the road. Jace, though, ignores the Spirit Dragon's warning and returns to Sea Gate to begin work on his plan. Nissa is well on her way to locate the Nalini Heart, a hidden growth on the plane that acts as a stand-in for the soul of Zendikar. She believes that she can use the heart as a means to reattune herself to the plane and, thus, regain her full magical abilities. Guided by visions, she is able to locate the heart. Unfortunately, she was not alone, as an ancient entity was also in search of the heart. Many years into the past, when Nahiri was still the one guarding Zendikar, a human planeswalker known as Ob Nixilis, whom specializes in demonic magics, arrived on the plane intent on conquering it and claiming the world for himself. Nahiri was having none of it, and, when Nixilis was in his demonic form, jammed Hedrons into his back, trapping him in the form of a demon while also sapping away his planeswalker spark, trapping him on Zendikar for, seemingly, all time thereafter. Fast forward a millennium, and the demonic former planeswalker found himself at the Nalini Heart at the same time as Nissa, as he believes its power could reignite his spark and allow him to finally leave the plane. The two, each wanting the power of the heart for their own purpose, clash. Nissa, though, is able to attune with the heart, and her abilities return to her. She bests Nixilis in combat, and collapses a large pile of rock and earth atop him, trapping him underground. Satisfied, Nissa then returns to Sea Gate. Two of the Planeswalkers, Gideon and Nissa, reconvene at the ruins at Sea Gate, along with the admittedly impressive number of allies that Gideon was able to muster. There, they meet with various Eldrazi from Ulamog's brood, successfully repelling them from the area and reclaiming Sea Gate for the Zendikari. The victory, however, was short-lived, as soon after, the Sea Gate scholar, Jori N, returns from a scouting mission with bad news. Ulamog is on his way to Sea Gate. Gideon and his allied forces decide to stand their ground and defend what's left of the city, just as Jace returns from his mission. The Mind Mage lays out a plan to trap Ulamog by using the various Hedrons that had been scattered about the area. He and Nissa work together to align the Hedrons just so, as the other allies continue to fend off Ulamog and his spawn. Once the trap was set and ready, Gideon and his forces lured Ulamog to the center of the Hedron alignment. The plan was an overwhelming success, and Ulamog found himself to suddenly be trapped and nigh powerless. Unfortunately, Ob Nixilis, whom had clawed his way out of the pile of earth and stone that Nissa had buried him with, appears on the scene. Seeing the power of the Hedrons in action, he decides it's exactly what he needs to regain his spark. The demon knocks one of the Hedrons out of alignment and funnels the power of the Hedron ring into himself rather than against the trapped Titan. The burst of energy was enough to reignite his spark. A moment later, Chandra Nolar appears at Seagate, having had a change of heart and deciding, in the end, that helping Gideon against the Eldrazi was probably the right thing to do. Her arrival, however, was much too late to stop Nixilis from destroying the Hedron network surrounding Ulamog. Bent on revenge on Zendikar for 1,000 years imprisonment on the plane, and out of spite towards Nissa for taking the Nalini heart away from him, he provides the defenders of Seagate with a parting gift as he finally departs from the plane by beckoning a second Eldrazi Titan, the one known as Kozilek, to rise from the underground where he had been slumbering. Gideon and those keeping watch over Seagate now have 2 Titans and 2 broods to worry about. To say the least, things are not looking rosy on Zendikar. And that's where we'll leave the story of Battle for Zendikar. Of course, there's much more to tell in terms of the set itself. With design led by Mark Rosewater, development led by Eric Lauer, and art direction by Jeremy Jarvis, the set, mechanically, was a spin on factions. Rather than each faction being a color or a combination of colors, it was a battle between colored cards and colorless cards. This was achieved by a new named mechanic known as Devoid, which was one of 5 new name mechanics that debuted in the set.
So the one quality of the previous Eldrazi, when you ask people about them, the one quality was colorlessness. So I'm like, okay, colorlessness. At least it's something that people recognize as being a thing, and I can make that happen. But one of the problems I realized early on is I couldn't make them all generic mana. And the problem there is, if we want the Eldrazi to be a thing, we want some of them to be good. If we make them all colorless mana, we run into the artifact issue, which is, well, then every deck plays the good ones. Anyway, so I like the idea of colorlessness. We're going to have things that are colorlessness for the sake of being colorlessness, and we can care about colorlessness as a thing, but they're going to have some color in their cost. Would end up becoming devoid. So one of the things that I want to do is try to find ways to make you care about a brand new subset. In order to make you care about a brand new subset, I have to somehow mark it. Because how do you know what the subset is? And so one of the things that I've tried is, and this is a lesson of Devoid. Devoid was there to be a marker, really. I mean, it was there to be, hey, don't get confused, this is what it means. And mostly we wanted to be able to say, hey, we want to care about this quality. And Devoid allowed us to make a lot of cards have this quality. But the problem was Devoid unto itself didn't do anything. All Devoid did was tell you, hey, this card has this quality. And people have an association with keywords that they do something. So there was a lot of unhappiness with Devoid because Devoid didn't do anything. It's like, oh, it's a keyword that does nothing.
Battle for Zendikar's other new named mechanics include Awaken, an alternate casting cost for spells that lets its caster turn one of their lands into a 0/0 elemental creature with haste, and a specific number of +1/+1 counters upon it. Converge, an ability word that gives an effect for each color of mana used to cast a spell. Ingest, a creature mechanic that says whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, that player exiles the top card of their library. And Rally, an ability word that provides an effect whenever an ally enters the battlefield. It's a tweak of the unnamed ally mechanic from the original Zendikar block. Landfall, a mechanic that debuted in original Zendikar from 2009, makes its return in Battle for Zendikar as well. In fact, there are 3 cycles in the set that feature Landfall. Retreats, which are mono-colored enchantments with a modal landfall triggered effect. Color-specific landfall creatures, which are mono-colored rare creatures with landfall that have an effect when a land of their respective basic type enters the battlefield. And Pump landfall creatures, which is a cycle of common mono-colored creatures that have a landfall ability that gives them each a temporary +2/+2 boon. Other cycles of note amongst the 7 in the set include Blighted Lands, which are uncommon lands that tap for a colorless mana and can be sacrificed for an ability at a mono-colored cost, and Allied Colored Battle Lands, which is a cycle of rare dual lands with land types that enter the battlefield tapped unless the controller controls 2 or more basic lands. Of course, there are also a handful of single cards worth a mention in Battle for Zendikar, such as Bring to Light, a spell with Converge that lets you search your library for any creature, instant, or sorcery card up to the number of colors used in casting the spell, allowing its caster to then cast that card for free. Endless One, a simple 0/0 creature that enters with X +1/+1 counters upon it. Painful Truths, a strong card advantage spell that has seen use in Standard, Modern, Legacy, and Vintage. Radiant Flames, a flexible quasi-board wipe with Converge that saw play in sideboards in Standard and Pioneer. Retreat to Koralheim has been used as a part of a number of combos, most famously with the card Knight of the Reliquary in modern Bant decks. Sanctum of Ugin, a non-basic land that lets you search your library for a colorless spell when you cast a colorless spell of mana cost 7 or greater. You can then put that card into your hand, sacrificing the Sanctum in the process. The card would become a degenerate part of modern Eldrazi decks, especially when paired with Eldrazi Temple and Eye of Ugin. Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger, one of the 3 Eldrazi Titans and, arguably, the strongest of these second versions of the Titans, thanks to its spot removal ability upon cast, it eating, so to say, 20 cards of a defending player's deck via exiling those cards, and being a 10/10 indestructible creature for 10 colorless mana. Void Winnower, an Eldrazi that prohibits your opponents from casting spells with, and blocking with creatures having, even-numbered casting costs. Wasteland Strangler, an Eldrazi card that has seen play in numerous modern decks, and makes use of exiled cards owned by your opponent. And Zulaport Cutthroat, a very effective, low-costed creature that's often used in Aristocrat-style playstyles. The set also introduced, in a very small percentage of booster packs, Expedition cards, which were a limited run bonus sheet showcasing various land cards from Magic's past in a unique frame. In total, the set had 25 Expedition cards. That includes the set's 5 new dual lands, 10 shock lands, and 10 fetch lands. As far as promotional cards go, Battle for Zendikar features Blightherder as its launch promo, Ruinous Path as its Buy a Box promo, a full art Stasis Snare as its game day participation promo, with top 8 finishers also being given a foil full art Radiant Flames. Pre-release promos were randomized, date-stamped rare or mythic rare cards found in the set, a practice still done today. And speaking of Battle for Zendikar's pre-release, it's the first time in common organized play that the then new Vancouver Mulligan rule was put into effect. Named after the Pro Tour stop where the rule was introduced, the Vancouver Mulligan has a player wanting to redraw their opening hand, shuffling that hand back into the library, then drawing that many cards -1 for each mulligan. Then, any player with 6 or fewer cards in their opening hand can scry 1. The Vancouver Mulligan rule has since been replaced by the London Mulligan rule, which took effect with the release of Core Set 2020, and remains the game's current Mulligan rule still today. But in getting back to Battle for Zendikar in specific, how does Magic the Gathering head designer Mark Rosewater see the set in hindsight?
In retrospect, I feel like I made a lot of mistakes on Battle for Zendikar. And so what happened was we kind of left on a cliffhanger, which was the Eldrazi are out and seen. You know, like you saw them fight them, but we weren't really clear what happened to them. So I felt like when we came back, I'm like, okay, we kind of ended on a cliffhanger. I felt like, I guess we have to pick up on that. So I think that was a mistake, by the way. So we have data. We know that people really liked Zendikar. They liked Worldwake. Not quite as much as Zendikar, but they like Zendikar and they like Worldwake. And Rise of Eldrazi is known for being a very fun, limited environment for more advanced players. And if you understood it, it was fun. I mean, there's a lot of cool things you could do, but it required you really rethinking Limited because it just functioned really different. Now, while it was popular among the sort of advanced drafting crowd, that's it. That's who liked it. The set did not do particularly well. It did not sell particularly well, and a lot of our market research showed that a lot of people were very mixed on it. So when we went back to Zendikar, in retrospect, I did very little to capture the adventure world, only because there's only so much you can show. And I sort of said, okay, well, the Eldrazi are there. That's the cliffhanger. Well, let's deal with the Eldrazi. And in retrospect, I wish I'd figured out a way to continue the story that wasn't so Eldrazi focused. There was a lot that went wrong, and I don't have easy answers. If you said tomorrow, okay, you get to do it all over again, I don't know exactly what I would do. Some of the sets where I made a mistake, I look back and I go, oh, I know exactly what I did wrong. This is a set where I recognize things that went wrong, but I don't necessarily know what I was supposed to do. And part of it is I think I made decisions that led me down a path that there wasn't a good answer to. Development worked really hard to clean up a lot of the stuff I did, and the set is as good as it is because of a lot of developmental work. I'm not even blaming my design team. This is me. This is the guy who set the vision on this set. I just made some poor choices, and I didn't recognize early enough that the poor choices just didn't have good answers. I kind of set everybody up for some level of failure because I didn't create good answers.
So what do you think about Battle for Zendikar? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section. Also, please remember to like this video and subscribe to Magic Untapped's YouTube channel. We also have a tip jar on Patreon if you are feeling so generous. Thank you for watching.